And we're live. Yeah.
Good morning.
We was waiting for a little ding that lets us know we're here.
Yeah. It's always a bit later than we're expecting.
Yeah,
We always press the button and it's like, oh, it's not working. And then it goes live every time.
I'm pretty sure we've said this about 100 times.
It confuses us every week.
Anywho.
Welcome to Waffle Time.
Welcome to Waffle Time. I'm Mitto. This is Jay. We are your waffling
Duo.
And we waffle about RC stuff and drift stuff and other stuff that has no relevance whatsoever.
We are the Waffle Masters.
Squeeze me. So yeah, basically this morning we're going to talk about a few things. Shouldn't clap. That's really loud on the mic.
Yep. Sorry, headphone users.
Yeah. We had some international visitors who were super awesome. We're going to talk about those guys. Yep. We're going to talk about some bits we've done to our own chassis.
Yep.
We're going to talk about a magical chassis which is hiding here. We've got some other stuff to get through. We've got the battery testing that we've started on
a few updates. Yep.
The Nosram battery we had in last week. A little bit on Acuvance, and then also we've got question time.
We've got a lot of questions this week and some very good questions.
We're cutting the main show short a little today because we've got so many questions
and so many questions that require in-depth answers.
Exactly, which is really good because eventually we may not even need to come up with any subjects because you guys will just provide them all, which would be amazing.
Save us a lot of hassle.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So keep the questions coming in. That's what we enjoy the most because it's actually telling you what you want to know rather than what we're guessing you want to know.
I just realised I have an Instagram this, so carry on.
What, that or that?
This.
This, the waffle.
Yeah.
Do you Instagram us some Waffle Time?
I do.
Like, oh look, we're doing Waffle Time.
Need to do a stupid post just for the Instagram guys.
What do my fingers look like? God, that looks
anyway,
weird.
For these guys now.
Anyway, yeah. So, I don't mean a Frenchman. Anyway, whoops. So yeah, we had some international visitors over. We had Lasse Sorensen from Norway. Yep. Doing his thing. He's kind of going around promoting King of Europe and all the stuff he's doing now, and obviously Yokomo because he is a full-time professional RC driver and events organizer, which is pretty damn impressive. I think Lasse is in
pushing
RC
hard.
Drifting. He is the only full-time professional.
I believe so. In Europe, anyway. I don't know.
In Europe, obviously Japan, there's it's different, and I don't know about America and Australia, but in Europe for sure. So well done, Lasse. That's amazing. I know he's working his ass off.
Yes, he is, and he's pretty committed to it.
Yeah, he's
just good to see. He's not just sort of winging it and hoping.
But he's still having fun with it.
He's probably watching.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah, he is. He said he's
going to rebuild his chassis.
Hey, Lasse. Tak for coming over. Tak is thanks in Norwegian. That's literally.
I was going to say, good job of putting the effort in to say something in Norwegian.
It's the only Norwegian I've got, so that'll do. Apart from the stuff Bjart taught me, which I've completely forgotten, which was all.
And you probably shouldn't say on camera.
Exactly, it was all hideously rude. Apart from the gobbler, but the gobbler is still rude. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for coming over, Lasse. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
it's I think it shows a lot of progression for Lasse to come over since I started, and the Norwegians had that that real hardcore 50-50 style. Lasse's now promoting the whole counter style, and it shows a huge progression.
He's a good ambassador.
Yeah. So we also had Sebastian Wunder, Max Gleisner, and Tim Lepperhoff over from Germany. From Team NRW. Super awesome
Pretty
guys.
hardcore. Turned up super late on Friday night.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning. Thanks for that, guys. Good planning. But yeah, I've stayed at Tim's place.
Yeah.
He lives in Wuppertal.
I don't know where that is.
It's beautiful. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like a city that just emerges from the mountains. It's bizarre. You're driving through nothing, and then all of a sudden, there's a city. It's a really cool place. So I stayed at Tim's place. Tim paints ridiculously good bodies. Yeah. I stayed at Sebastian's place, and Sebastian makes ridiculously good barbecue. He lives on the top floor, and his entire balcony has basically been turned into a massive griddle, so that you can have massive barbecue parties.
Living the dream.
That is this. Every week it's barbecue at Sebastian's place. So yeah, you'd love that. It's really good, and he's got cats. I like cats, goblins. And Max, I don't really know a lot about Max, but I know he's doing rear-wheel drive, and he's a nice dude.
Yep.
Met all these guys at Gamescom last year. I know
coming up again in a couple of weeks.
This year, I know Lasser's going to Gamescom again.
I was a bit
Gamescom in Germany.
I felt a bit bad this time because when all these guys came over, unfortunately, I had a big family thing on the Saturday night, so I had to bail about 4 or 5 o'clock on Saturday
These things
night,
happen, and family comes first.
Fortunately, it was something I couldn't miss.
But like I was saying, they all looked after me at Gamescom. Super nice guys. And I believe everybody enjoyed themselves. All the guys said they wanted to come back.
That's good.
Lasser wanted to come back, and Lasser is very experienced. You know, now he's been to Japan, he's been to Thailand, he's been to Shift Circuit. You know, he's been to some cool places. So, you know, for Lasser to come over and be like, "Yeah, this is cool. I want to come back here." That's a big compliment.
It's probably something to do with the Corolla.
Yeah,
and the fun.
We took him out for Corolla rides, and I can't go into too much detail or get arrested, but
it was good fun.
It was a laugh, yeah. So yeah, you know, they all came over, they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Max is doing his rear-wheel drive thing. I think he learned a lot because we have a very strong local rear-wheel drive community going on.
Yeah, definitely.
We also had some international visitors from Teesside because it takes them. Like, it probably takes them as long as it takes Lasser to fly here to drive down.
It wasn't far off.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had
Andrew
and
Ryan
Alec. Those guys came down, and that's, you know, it's a hell of a journey, and we appreciate the distance that everybody travels to come and see us.
Yeah, definitely.
That's super, super good. We did add in some more stuff to the circuit.
Yep, tweak the line a little
bit. We tweaked the line on the Saturday when all of the guys were here together, because literally the trains were, you know, 10, 12 cars deep. Normally we get a train here, it would be 5 or 6 cars, and it's kind of a couple of trains going on.
Yeah.
This one, it was just everyone together. So, you know, I had to lead the train and basically tweak the line so there was enough room for everybody, because that is a lot of cars to be getting around a circuit together. So that was
especially
super
a relatively small circuit.
I believe RC Kingstar, Archosaurus, who's probably watching, what up, Ark, may have got some decent footage of that as well. So
maybe
hopefully that will turn up, and we'll see what happens. I do have some more international gossip.
What's international gossip?
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Right, okay. Before anyone sues us.
But I know that today, international...
We're talking about an Irish thing here.
It's not Irish.
Oh, no? Okay.
Is the international destroyer of everything, Luke Fink, is currently down the road in Milton Keynes, go-karting. I'm
probably
not sure if he's...
go-karts.
But basically, Dan Chapman, also destroyer of worlds, has basically recommended that Luke Fink comes here.
That would be cool.
So whether he turns up...
Is that today or tomorrow?
I think tomorrow, but possibly even today, I don't know. But if Luke turns up, that'd be pretty cool, because I've not seen him in a long time. And he is kicking ass right now. He is just, like, he's always been a bit
he's
ready for destruction, but
full on anger mode. He's approaching bomb rage situations with a lot of things.
I think he might have surpassed it. Bomb rage is sort of inflicted on himself. Like Fink rage is inflicted on everyone else. You know, that's kind of.
Until I see Luke set fire to a diff while driving carefully on the road, Bomb wins everything.
That's true. I've never seen anyone actually set a diff on fire apart from Bomb.
Yeah,
I've blown a few up, but I haven't set one on fire. That's pretty magical.
And then put the fire out and carried on.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Oh, Bomb, where are you, man? Come back.
Needs to come back.
Make a comeback.
Yeah.
Driftworks have just sold the 32. They should have kept it. Yeah, I saw it on a trailer getting shipped off.
Didn't even know that.
They should have kept it and just said, "Bon, we need the rage."
Nah, Bon needs his own JZX.
Bon needs.
He needs to get out running. He needs to get it running.
He needs a team of like Ewoks that just fixes stuff all the time.
He just needs somebody to give him a big check and say, "Bon, just turn up at this event in 6 months."
No, he'll still buy a donkey turbo and a crap gearbox.
No, he won't.
I know what Bon's like. You're like, it'll be fine.
No, if it wasn't his money. If it was somebody else's money,
blazing on fire. Yeah. Anyway,
let's waffle it.
Well, that's what we're here for.
No, it's not.
There's never enough waffle. So that's all that stuff going on. There was something else I wanted to mention.
I was going to say, I was thinking of something that I needed to bring up, but I forgot next week. Talking about.
We got distracted by bloody Bon.
Yep.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Fink actually, he learned his craft, a lot of it in Japan.
Yes.
So his style is very much the Japanese style. He's run with Yokoi and Naoki and all those kind of guys. But actually, myself and Luke, we've chatted at length about the Japanese drivers and the Japanese style, and we're both pretty much on the same page with that. So what he aspires to is crazy high level.
That's good.
I would like to see Fink and Naoki going mental because they're both low brain drifters. There you go. I don't think that's.
I think that's a plug.
Naoki isn't officially, but you know they're both dumbasses that like to drive hard. Anywho, we did some other stuff. Jay has done more things to
the shiny,
the magical dose of over.
You should probably flip it around because the other side shows.
Well, we've got it on a spinny thing, so we can spin it and things.
Yes.
What have you done, Jay?
I've fitted some parts that we got in stock. So I now have, admittedly, it's all black. The prop shaft is not available in gold, that particular one. That's the new style prop shaft. But it now has the new prop shaft. It has the new battery, well, the black battery holder, and I also put a battery strap on.
Yep.
I actually think I have everything to get that finished now. I just need the time to sit down and build it properly.
That is full on Overdose, even the spur gear holder, the diffs.
Even the ball links and everything.
Yeah, so technically...
The only part on that is not... the only parts on that are not Overdose are the damper mounts, which will be Overdose. I did have MST dampers on before, but I now have a set of Overdose dampers.
Yep.
Excuse me, and the front arbor that I'm aware of. Oh, and the rear spool, sorry.
Is the spool the Yokomo?
Yes, the spool is the aluminium Yokomo because I couldn't find the ones I wanted.
The Overdose one.
Well, I couldn't find the Overdose one, and I was going to get a black RC96 one, but I couldn't find that in stock at the time when I saw it, and I figured that's fine. You can't see that it's blue anyway.
I was going to say the only thing left Yokomo about it is the chassis design, isn't it, really?
Even that's not really. I suppose the bumper foam as well.
Oh, and the bumper foam and the body posts.
Oh, body posts are Overdose. Yep, they came with the bumper.
Damn. That's pretty intense, man.
It's literally everything.
So how big's your mortgage?
I don't have a mortgage because I have stupid RC cars.
Yeah.
If I sold all my RC stuff, I could probably get a deposit on a house.
This is basically the only chassis that makes my Devel seem reasonably priced.
I think the funny thing with that is it's probably not the most expensive chassis.
Right.
But it's certainly exclusive. Like I know of one other gold Overdose chassis on a matte black thing in the world, which is weird because when it was on the Ject, it was the only gold one.
Now there's another one.
Now there's now there's a I know Hector in America. I think he's American.
I've seen a pink one.
there's a bunch that are fully upgraded. I mean,
the pink one had
one of the German guys had a blue one, didn't he?
Jens has got a rear-wheel drive FRD in pink.
Yeah.
The pink one I saw in Japan, I was looking at it, and I thought it had just a normal plastic tub on it. I was like, oh, what would you do that for after all that? Yeah. Turns out it was aluminium TN Racing tub chassis, which was
super rare,
crazy rare and expensive. And it was just like, oh, God. So the money you can spend on these things.
My plan is to basically sit down for a day at some point in a not too distant future and strip that down properly and build it as an expert built chassis with everything perfectly measured.
You mean make it work?
No, I mean not just make it work, but build it right, absolutely perfect every time. Make sure all the dampers are 100%
balls and
yeah, and then also finish the chassis.
Yeah,
just get like all the little parts that I've got stashed away. And
you
get them fitted.
Need to do that because this, like now, it's kind of got a look to it as well because the you know, everything below the sort of deck internally is black, and then you've got the gold going on. You've got black knuckles. So
the only slightly annoying thing is I currently don't have electrics for it that work in terms of with that style. So I need to put a dual BS in there. I need to put the new all black servo in that we'll have in stock soon.
Yeah.
I need to put I need to get a matte black ESC for it.
Are you going to keep it till next year for best chassis?
It won't win best chassis.
I don't know, man. It's pretty spectacular.
It won't win best chassis.
It's got too many logos.
I need to drill some holes in it and fit some random thing for it to win best chassis. It's just
you need like a Tamiya part on it or something.
There's too many Overdose logos for to give me best chassis.
A gold VDF part.
I nearly had some of them actually. Martin offered me his gold rear knuckles, but they've got marks and scratches on. So
that's a shame.
So I said no. So anyway, that's kind of done. Well, it's not done, but it's close to being done.
it's spectacular.
It won't be running that caster. That was just to see what
if you could
get.
I have fitted. Hopefully you'll be able to see that.
One of these.
Not really. Yeah, the new servo holder.
Servo mount.
Servo mount.
That thing.
Yeah, can fit. Believe that way, so you can lay it flat or you can stand it up.
Yeah,
mine stood up.
You want to turn that around if you can do that, so people can see the shininess.
Yeah, so it stands up that way, so you can see the Overdose plaque and everything. That's it laid down. Obviously, mine stood up. I had a random piece left over from my old servo mount, so I just made an extra brace. An extra brace that doesn't actually do anything. It just says Overdose on it, and it means that the chassis is ever so slightly more expensive. Why that makes a difference, I've got no idea.
They're pretty cool. They are specifically designed for the Vaculet and the Deval, so they don't fit the
there
chassis.
Was a thing going around on Facebook about Overdose quality.
Yes, because it doesn't fit a different chassis.
Because it doesn't fit other chassis. Servo mounts are universal, but obviously they are designed for the chassis that they're designed for.
They're universal to take the servos.
Exactly.
They fit the standard size servos, but they
Overdose actually make a slot for their lower servo mounts.
So does the new DPR.
Yeah, which accommodates multiple servo mounts. But there are variances between manufacturers. And also when you do up your servo mounts, you can put flex on them if you're not using washers on them as well.
The key is, the reason I have a purple one is it's going on this thing. But unfortunately, the hole is about 1 millimeter out on a MST. It's not a bad thing. It's just that MST give you a bit more room around your servo. Simple as that. So,
but if you,
I just need to file the hole, or I'm actually going to drill a couple of holes to move it so that it stands and looks better.
But if you literally run a 1.5 mil, not 1, like run a drill bit through it, I think 3.5 mil, you should be able to just get enough in there to pull itself in. Well, you shouldn't even need to recounter it; it'll just settle itself.
Probably, but it's
so a little tension on something that's made of aluminium solid anyway doesn't make much odds.
Yeah, you just got to make sure that the screw head doesn't protrude.
Yep. So that's the score with that.
Yeah, there's kind of no rush for it for me.
Yeah,
it'll wait until I tweak a few things on this. It all needs rewiring anyway to make it look a bit
less shit.
Yeah,
that's how that goes. So yeah, Overdose, usual quality. To suggest otherwise is ridiculous.
Yes, it shows a lack of understanding.
Yes. So that's what we've been doing with those. I'll make that go away, and for now, this can go away, and you can make that go away because if I lose that, you'll be upset. Right. The other thing we've done, won't bother getting out because you've seen it before.
Super quick.
Jay's been testing the Nosram battery.
4700 Shorty. It seems pretty good. I'm quite impressed. They are more expensive than the Thunder Power option.
Pretty steep, in fact.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I think it's £80.
Yeah, which is
quite steep. And it's also bright red, which is the thing that disappoints me more. To be honest.
If it was £80, it was black, and it'd be like okay, but the red, I think
red and purple does not look good.
No, I think red doesn't really look that good.
No, because it's the wrong red.
Yeah,
and it's too much. Even if it was the right red.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with that, and we're currently hoping, praying, keeping fingers crossed that the Thunder Powers will be coming back.
Yeah,
we currently have no ETA on them at all, which is mega frustrating.
So yeah,
because that's our go-to battery.
Somebody did comment on our video last week and say we should bring in the Racing Performer Yokomo batteries. Unfortunately, we have to go through the Yokomo distribution channels, and currently I'm unaware of the UK distributor bringing those batteries in. If they do, we've not been able to find them.
Yeah. Also, there are certain regulations with bringing batteries in, or oils, or anything of that nature, which can be quite problematic. We have
especially from an insurance point of view.
We have very high standards in the UK in terms of what you can and can't bring in relative to paperwork. So even for bringing the overdose oil in, we have to have a lot of documentation.
Safety data sheets telling you what to do if you put it in your eye, what to do if you put it in your mouth, what to do if it burns your skin, what to do if all of this.
And also
that's 4 pages.
Part of the chemical composition.
Yes.
But obviously we're not allowed to divulge that information.
Trade secrets.
Which should
possibly.
I know we've got a question on. that later from Thu, who is two.
Yeah,
it's spelt Thu.
Yeah,
I'm just that English guy, aren't I?
Yeah,
2.
I prefer to think of Jens as 1 and 2 as 2.
That's terrible. I've completely lost. The 2 is basically an expert in that field.
Yes,
and he's asking us expert questions. So thanks for that. We're not experts in that field, but we'll do our best, and we'll get to that later. The only other thing to get into is there was some stuff about Acuvance we wanted to kind of.
Yeah, well, I've been helping Dave Coe for a few days. Dave Coe used to be known as Avoca Drift Shed in Australia, or on Facebook even, and he's had a few problems with Acuvance because he's kind of a bit of a lone wolf over there. There's no one else really running Acuvance in his area. There's no one really to offer him assistance. He's had a bit of bad luck, and he found it very frustrating to set his Acuvance ESC up. Part of it is because there is a slightly awkward thing with updating the ESC, and part of it is because you just have to have an understanding of how they work, which you normally get by talking to your dealer or talking to.
I think it was described as what he was running previously is, like running carbs, and then what we're running is like, the Acuvance is like F1 technology relative.
It's kind of one of those things where if he'd have had a local, because I believe he ordered it from RC Mart or somewhere.
Yeah.
And I believe if he'd have ordered it from a local dealer, I don't know if there is even one over there right now, to be honest, but he would have just been able to ring up and say, how do I do this? But because we're on the other side of the world, he didn't think to contact us. So I actually sent him a message and just said, like, the last couple of mornings as I've come into the office, I've sat and helped him over Facebook, and we got it sorted. There is a slight a bit of a lottery when trying to update your ESC with Acuvance, because they're not software developers. They don't pay for the digital driver signatures that Windows make you pay for a license and all that sort of thing. So you have to do a couple of workarounds, which we did. But unfortunately, on certain computers, because of antivirus and because of software security settings and things, they can cause you some hassles.
Question time. Since we're on the subject, Ark has asked specifically whether the update software.
Let me find the question.
Are we just reeling straight into question time?
Let's just go to question time.
Okay. We got a lot of questions today, so.
Eric has asked, that's Andy for those.
Andy King, RC Kingstar.
I'm currently running version 1 of the Acuvance ESC, thinking of updating to the latest one, but I don't have PCs available for Mac. No. What advantages are there?
PC is available for Mac.
If the update is available for Mac. Or the update software, it should say, is available for Mac. It's not. It's only available for PC.
Okay.
What advantages will it have from Tau 1 to Tau 2? There's a huge number of advantages, including better resolution, including lots
By
of
resolution, we're talking about the drive frequency, and effectively the response between your hand and the car kind of thing.
Yeah, and but it also enables a lot of extra functions like more control over the turbo, rev limiter function, that kind of thing is all enabled when you update the ESC. And
it's also much finer adjustment, isn't it?
Yes.
And to be fair, for me, I'm looking even further back because I ran the test software for a long time, so I got used to that resolution.
Yep.
So actually, the leap for me was smaller because I'd sort of had the leap already.
Yeah.
But I know the Japanese pro guys have been testing it for a long time, and that is some really, really dialed in stuff. So super accurate, worth every penny. Do it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
So let's start like at the beginning.
I'm just going to run through the questions as they appear, so I don't get too confused. Chris Butcher has asked,
Chris,
having recently acquired a XXX with plastic bevel gears, with the motor removed, the driveline feels notchy. Is this correct for the shaft drive, or do we need to adjust the mesh of the bevel gears?
That shouldn't be notchy.
I was going to say it kind of depends. It's one of those things that's hard to describe without actually feeling it for myself. But essentially, if you're describing it as notchy because you can feel each tooth on the gear turning instead of a belt, then that's not notchy. If there's a lot of resistance, then that does need shimming. Essentially, when you shim your diff, which you have to do on shaft drive chassis, and you actually kind of need to do on belt drive chassis, but belt drive is just to position the belt to make sure it's relatively centered. On a shaft drive chassis, you need to be able to slide the diff very fractionally away from
Yeah, same as meshing the spur gear and pinion.
Basically,
slightly slacker than that.
Yeah,
but
you don't want the two gears to be forced into each other. That you need to just be able to move one away from the other. And obviously, it's the
two other things to look for is on your crown wheel, which is the larger gear. When you put it into the diff, make sure you're using the correct screws and they are all the way in, because on some of the gears, the pinion, which is a smaller one, can protrude slightly, and it'll catch the head of the bolts as it goes round if you've not set it up right. Another thing to look for, a random one I got the other day, is from the Tachyon wheels. Tachyon wheels will not work with every chassis.
Yes.
Because there's clearance issues on the inside. So check that as you're rotating your wheel, it's not catching on the inside of a Tachyon wheel.
I encountered that problem when I was actually in Japan.
Yeah, well, same. That's why I can't run them on
Overdose. I thought they were fine because I gave it a quick spin and it cleared. But what I hadn't realised is there's 3 tabs that hold the
and when you put your chassis down and the arm,
not even that. There was just one of the tabs. It clicked, which the instructions obviously tell you to make sure it clicks, but it hadn't clicked in quite as far as the others. So where I tested it, I went through the range of 2 of the tabs and it was fine. The third one was catching.
Yeah.
And actually, all I had to do was take the wheel off and push it in further, and then I had a bit more clearance. And then as soon as I changed my settings, they didn't work afterwards. But I thought I had a problem with, my chassis. It turned out it was just the wheel binding. But when I looked for the clearance, there was easily a millimeter. So I was like,
it's just, the trouble with things like that is there's so many little factors that create that. But basically, with a shaft drive, when your motor isn't attached, it should be absolutely smooth,
and you should be able to spin
with your motor attached. I can't do it because I've got a bloody ball diff in.
Oh,
no. But you can see that that freely rotates by itself. So it should be like that. And that's pretty gnarly. That needs lubing up and sort of remeshing of things. But it should be that free. It should be a clean movement. Should rotate on its own. Because if it's binding and you're on a slippery surface, it's basically like extra little handbrakes all the time.
Yeah, and more strain on your motor, more strain on your ESC, more battery life usage and that kind of thing. Right, next question. Taj has asked, on a particular set of tyres on concrete, my RMX's front response seems really slow. The car wants to straighten off, went off throttle. Once it grabs, it over-rotates really easily. Any idea where to start to fix this problem? Generally, I'm going to say front damper position. I found that to be really important with my chassis. Yeah,
it's a misbalance in the chassis.
Yeah.
Also, what I'd say is, are you using the right tyre?
Before you go too far into this, I believe, from what I understand, this is a control tyre for a competition.
So there's no
option.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so it's more about
no
how
option,
to correct the issue.
Then it's just a balance issue. You've just got to kind of try and balance the front grip to the rear grip.
I would suggest front damper angle, front springs.
Yeah. And if we refer back to the 10-step guide, which got up over on the wall, you balance your rear grip to your front grip. So set the front end up first, then worry about dealing with the rear. Yeah. So get all your front end dialed, and then get the rear end dialed to balance it out, kind of thing. It sounds like Ty's run the RMX at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah.
RMX, very similar to setting up the Deval, because it's rear heavy, it's rear biased. It's got a lot of rear traction. It's quite hard to dial in that front traction. So literally try and put as much of the grip to the front as you can, then work from there, kind of thing. But also, if it wasn't a control tyre, I'd say look at the actual tyre choice, because you want the tyre to be as consistent as possible. The tyre's not consistent, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those that you just got to do a bit of testing and tuning and try a fair few options. But generally, it's front. For me, it's just all about the front damper angle. I found that to be really critical on the RMX.
Yeah.
It fixed a lot of problems for me when I finally got it right.
Yeah. Deval's the same.
Yeah. Two, anyway, he has asked, is it correct that the Overdose oil is mineral based? I saw it on some random Facebook page where it's also stated that you had to use only this for your Overdose HG dampers. We don't actually know 100% what it is because it is literally marked as trade secret.
That's on
you can't show that.
This documentation here.
It's got some info on it, can't be shown.
Yeah.
But our safety sheet declares it as mixed. its substance is mixed. So I understand it to be a balance of mineral oil and something else, probably silicon.
I can tell you, if you swallow it, call your poison centaur.
Yeah.
Immediately, or your doctor, and don't induce vomiting.
Yes, that's good. Good. No vomiting, please.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the reason that people suggest using the Overdose oils is because they work really well, and it's kind of logical if you think about it. Overdose, when they design their dampers, are going to use the shock oil that they have lying around, which is going to be their own stuff. So it's designed to work on it. It is really, really consistent. It is really. What are you looking at?
We can say that, can't we?
No.
We can't say that?
No.
Wow, this is pretty intense.
See the words next to it? Trade secret.
Okay. I'm going to do the safety stuff because, safety first. If you get it in your eyes, flush your eyes with water for at least 15 minutes. If it still hurts your eyes, call your doctor. If you get it on your skin, wash it with soap until no odor remains. So technically, we're supposed to be using gloves with this stuff. Whoops. If you breathe it in, go somewhere where you're not breathing it in, basically.
Stop breathing it in.
Keep quiet and warm the body.
Okay.
If you stop breathing or have difficulty breathing, you need...
Try artificial respiration.
Or if you're not breathing, you need to obtain medical assistance while you're not breathing.
I hope that would be normal. Yeah. Anyway,
just basically don't do anything.
Let's move on. We've got too many questions to be fucking around with this stuff. Two's getting his dampers on Monday. Basically, my advice would be start with thinner oil than you normally would. The Overdose dampers generally are they respond better with very thin oil. I believe I'm running 10 and 15 as combinations in my two sets I have. We need to move on, dude.
This is intense, man. It's
just literally move on. Chris Butcher's asked another question.
All right, Chris.
He said, what makes the best improvement to smooth motor control, ESC/motor or transmitter?
Final drive.
No, let's not go down that road. He's asked a very specific question. It will depend based on how crap the stuff is you're moving from. If you have an okay motor and ESC and a terrible transmitter, then a transmitter will make a bigger difference.
Yeah.
If you have an okay transmitter and a terrible motor ESC, then the ESC motor.
What about looking at it in the sense of if you had to choose, would you choose a good transmitter and okay electrics, or would you choose amazing electrics and a crap transmitter?
I would choose.
I think I'd go transmitter.
Within reason. There's like, as long as the crap transmitter wasn't really crap.
Yeah, but what would you use it transmitter wise? I'd go for if you're on an absolute budget, then the MXV
yep.
or.
But if we're talking about an MXV or better, then I would go motor and ESC. If you've already got that standard.
If you've got an MXV, kind of. Yeah,
like I would go that way. But if you're talking about basic Fly Sky, Absema, any of those things, then I would replace the transmitter straight away.
I'd use an RTR controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of one of those.
100%.
But basically, the go-to controller is MT4S, and the go-to electrics are really, for us, the OMG stuff.
And Acuvance.
And the kick-ass stuff is the Acuvance. But the MT4S
if you could give me a car that had an MXV and an OMG combo, perfectly happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like no
enough. You can win stuff with that. You could win the worlds with that.
No problem.
If you've got enough of this.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Essentially, depends what you're running. If one of the elements is really bad, if you've got a really horrible motor, if you've got a really bad transmitter, just whatever you consider to be the worst is what I'd upgrade first. Is kind of the way to look at it.
Yes, kind of obvious.
Actar. He's asking about spring length and coil diameter. What effects do they have?
I've got some props
in bags.
But you can see them. Look, because you can see that these are 31 mil, these are 32. So, I bought these for the coil diameter. In terms of length, do you want to do length and I'll do girth?
Essentially, the length. Well, the length. The effect of the length varies quite a lot. And it's actually you've picked probably the best two examples to compare. Just hold them up again, will you? In terms of length, the distance between the coils makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
but the length itself does. Essentially, the longer the spring, the more movement you can have, the less preload that is required.
Yeah.
Essentially, in an ideal world, you don't run any preload on the spring initially. Like you may dial some into tune.
Well, you run 0. You wouldn't run into droop or preload.
Yeah, you want to capture the spring, and it just means there's less requirement to do that when you start out.
Yeah.
The traction point on the spring on a longer spring, this is a very general statement, but the traction point on a longer spring is generally wider and longer lasting.
Well, it's
depending on the coils,
it's because a long spring
can move more.
Well, it's slower.
Depending on rate.
So a short spring.
This is a very, very difficult question to answer because there's always a basic, apart from this, or in this situation, it's different.
But as a basic rule, a short spring does all its work very quickly.
Yes.
And a long spring does all its work very slowly.
Yes.
So if you are on until you change rates, but assuming rates the rate is constant, right? Assuming the rate is constant, if you're on a surface like carpet, you use a short spring.
Yeah.
Your grip will come very quickly, and that can make the grip very consistent on carpet.
Yeah.
But if you use a long spring on carpet, it can make the grip very slow. We use long springs here because the other side effect of that is that it makes for quite a realistic look, and our carpet's very slippery relative to the carpets. Yeah. So you don't treat it quite the same as
and the speeds are generally lower and that kind of thing. Yeah.
But for example, normally you'd use a short spring on a carpet. And you would use a long spring on polished concrete, resin, just as a p-tile.
That's a caveat, and that's a very general statement that you
don't need to follow. It is a very general statement. It's not gospel.
It's not a go and buy different springs because you.
But that's kind of a general rule, because on a surface with even less grip than ours, you want the grip to come in slower. So basically, you can tune the point
your reactions then have to be
damped down.
Yeah,
it's damping literally. But then also you've got to factor in the number of coils in that movement. So if you assume the spring length and the rate now is still fixed, right? So we've taken length out of the equation and we've fixed the spring rate still. If you've got a lot of coils, then what happens is they move in a longer range, but it means that their optimum traction point is very fine because you're working in the gap between each coil. So in that gap somewhere,
there's less movement as well until it binds.
Yeah. So there's less movement until it hits that point where it's like, right, there's the grip. With a wide coil like this,
that's a very wide coil.
That's a very wide coil, and we have them for this reason. It's that when the spring is coming into grip, obviously because the distance between the coil is bigger, the traction point or the optimum point between the coils is much wider. So you don't need to be on a point that's quarter of a millimeter. You need to be on a point that is now a millimeter.
Yeah.
So it's much easier.
Actually, on them, it's probably even longer than that. It's probably more like 2 millimeters.
Well, yeah, but it's much easier to get to that optimum traction point where you're getting the most grip from that spring. It might not be the most efficiency, but it's the most grip.
A very, very, very important side note, which I briefly touched on, which I'm only mentioning because it's come up about 3 times this week already for me, is there's a lot of people that are using the 30 millimeter progressive springs and then adding preload to then essentially bind up the softer part of the spring and make them essentially a 22 millimeter spring with
a helper spring
because the helper spring is fully compressed.
Well, but the helper spring is
and don't do that. If you've got the 32 mil springs and you're binding the coils, just take the preload off.
Progressive springs are very good. They're a little difficult to set up because you're basically, and it's the same actually with the RC926, the dual rate stubby springs. So you have the dual rate springs, and then what you're doing is you're actually creating a theoretical traction point between the two spring rates. If you get it bang on, it's amazing. If you're missing it, what you end up doing is when you wind that spring in, you're basically removing one of those traction points so that it becomes a half-size spring. So you might as well run a short spring.
Exactly. And the thing for me is we used to use the progressive springs all the time from MST, and we used to think they're amazing. But since then, they've been out a few years now. Since then, they've come out with springs that I think are better performing, easier to set up.
The go-to now for me is the wide coil 31.
Basically, the 31 and the 32 mil springs.
People became obsessed with how hard or soft your springs are. These are, I mean, relative to a lot of stuff, they're quite firm.
Yeah.
With the soft being equivalent to a hard in the soft range, it's, but because the traction's so easy to get from these, it's super good. But
Yeah,
you don't get quite as much dynamic.
I have the 31s on the front of my four-wheel drive chassis.
That's the wide coil, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have the titanium Overdose on the rear at the moment, but to be honest, I'll probably go back to the others. That's just testing 2 different sets at the minute.
Yeah.
But anyway, and the diameter is the important bit now. That's the other one. That's that question.
The diameter of
the coils themselves
is in the 1.1 and the 1.3.
No, it was in the width of the coil. The actual
diameter. That like that.
Yeah, the diameter. That essentially is one of those things that doesn't really matter.
It's kind of just a fitting thing.
Well, it does make a difference, but it's the combination of that and the coil.
The maths that's involved at that point, it gets much more complicated, and it's all to do with the internal resistance of the spring.
I had a very long conversation with Julian from IBAC Springs UK one time, and it was too much for my little brain.
Well, we have lots of, for instance, our old buddy Billy,
good old Billy Sutton
from R32 Life, and now working for Tane, was in here the other day, and he's dropped his suspension catalogues off. So if you want suspension for your car, feel free to come and have a look at these brochures. We've got them down here. But we have a lot of very expert level. We're amateur enthusiasts, but we know our stuff and we got a lot of experience. But
thanks for that.
Don't worry, that was just an overdose chassis. But we're not professionals at this, specifically at springs or damping. But we do have
essentially
and friends.
The honest answer to that, Acto, is don't worry about the diameter. Unless you meant the diameter of the material, in which case it essentially just makes it stiffer, assuming it's the same material.
Yeah, it's the strength, if you like, the sort of static.
Oh, okay. He did actually mean the diameter of the metal wire. I was just sending a message. So yeah, my mistake. I got confused.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So we went way off the mark. We went way too deep.
Yeah.
Well, we went full retard.
Kind of. So yeah, essentially it makes it stiffer, assuming everything else is the same. Yeah.
But
the thing with springs,
problem with springs.
There's a reason MST produce so many different sets of springs or spring types. It's because they all offer something different, because it's a combination of all of the elements together.
I think we need to write a thing on this.
Right thing.
I think what are they called, blogs. Yeah, one of them do.
It's your job. Because there's too many.
There's too many variables.
Well, there's too many areas in which you could say something that could completely go off and have everyone say, no, you don't use those. Mitto said you can't use those because they don't do this.
Yeah, and it's very easy to contradict yourself when it comes to springs, because so many factors do so many different things.
Yeah, and it then also depends on damper position and oils and everything else building in. A spring is one element of the suspension that has a big difference on how the car performs, but you can have two springs that are completely different, behave very similar with other things.
I think we've covered it in layman's terms, and that
just buy springs, buy all the springs,
buy all the springs, and test them all. But just look at the length, the coil width, and obviously the thickness of the material. If it's thinner, it'll generally react a bit faster. If it's thicker, it'll react a little bit slower. And match that to where you want your grip to be on the surface. But then also that's got to match FTR and shock oils, and it's super complicated. But that's the fun of the hobby, figuring it out.
Essentially, play around.
Yeah.
Right. Chris Butcher's question.
Right, Chris, again.
Is HT suspension considered better than MSO1D style? If so, why? It seems to be more difficult to adjust toe and have less adjustment. It's not that it's considered better. It's that it's more straightforward.
It is easier to make it smoother, and it is more straightforward. There's less margin for error. When you've got massive adjustment of the toe, you will adjust the toe massively.
Yeah.
Whereas when you've got less adjustment, you tend to leave it alone, and you will look at other, better, simpler solutions.
Yeah.
So the reason for everything going over to hinge pin really is just for ease of use. It's for ease of use and the ability to get to a good result quicker.
It's also more familiar to other guys that come from other RC
your
chassis.
Bump steer is constant. Whereas with the other style, it's
not on the front. It's not
on the front. We're talking about,
just for clarification.
Oh, for God's sake!
The things you say and everyone.
That's because everything in the bloody hobby, you can.
Yep.
Everything can basically go. Yeah, it works like this, but
apart from in this situation, or if you do this, in terms of it being more difficult to adjust toe, it's not more difficult. It's just different. It's if you got buy yourself an adjustable toe strap,
it inboard, not outboard.
Yes,
effectively.
Yeah.
Which has a more dramatic effect.
Yeah. Right. Next question. Tim Answer. What are your thoughts on the current trend of converting old CS chassis into rear-wheel drive chassis like my reversed MSO window?
We shell chassis, so we think it's
we
stupid.
Shell chassis?
We sell chassis, so we think it's stupid. And that should be on silent.
You need to put it on silent now or it's going to keep going.
Yeah, I did.
Anyway,
what's wrong with it?
I think it's kind of cool, but I think if you're serious about rear-wheel drive, you should get a rear-wheel drive chassis.
It definitely needs to be an RMX VIP or RRX VIP, something really expensive.
Actually, that was something we should have mentioned in a minute. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But
then we can buy Ferraris. 458s.
We're going to get there pretty soon doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty fun. I messed around when we were at Driftworks with my MSO 1D as a rear-wheel drive chassis and had good fun with it.
It was appalling though at that time.
Well, we were many years ago.
Yeah. My Deval's been rear-wheel drive.
I do think if you want to get into rear-wheel drive properly, you should buy a rear-wheel drive chassis because I'm yet to drive a converted chassis that drives as well as a basic dedicated chassis.
Yeah.
Or purpose design chassis.
Yeah.
We have to remember is the guys who design these chassis are very clever. They test all of these things. If an MS was going to be as good as an RRX, they wouldn't bother with the RRX.
Yeah,
because they know they wouldn't sell them.
Well, I also think if you go in rear-wheel drive, you need.
But I think it's good to learn
centralized motor as well. Like I think that's kind of the key to it is that the weight is in the center and balanced.
I disagree.
So, well, like when you've got a triple X and the motor's offset, the torque I find is.
I thought you meant between the axles. I thought you meant
it can be, that way, not anywhere
side to side
in the chassis. It doesn't really matter as long as the motor is in the chassis, whether it's longitudinally or.
I don't think that's essential, but I do think it's a benefit.
I think it helps.
Yeah.
I think it helps. But initially, if you just want to try rear-wheel drive, use whatever you got, put a gyro in it, and enjoy it. Like it's all meant to be fun. So
yeah, for sure.
Try it first, see if you like it. If you like it, push harder. I think the best rear-wheel drive I've driven is the RMX.
For sure. By quite a considerable margin.
Yeah, actually.
And I think the RRX is going to be a big step up from that as well.
The only one I completely contradictory to what I just said about the motor position, the only other one I drove that I was like, wow, this is amazing, was a GRK. And I think that is because it belonged to the pro driver from GRK, Renato.
Yeah, and had a lot of development.
But his four-wheel drive was incredible as well, that's the settings thing.
A quick note which I'm just going to throw in there, I had an email this morning to say that the RRX is going to be released next week. So we had a question, I can't remember where it is, so I'm not going to quote the question, but it was asking
getting one.
There it is.
Can I tout my triple X for sale so I can
hang on let me say what I'm saying because it's important. Jay has asked, it looks like the RRX DVIP is now available stateside. It's not, it's available to pre-order. We didn't want to put a pre-order out because we didn't have a final release date. We do now, so we may offer that this week. It's going to be released in the UK next week. We will have stock towards the end of next week or the start of the week after, depending on shipping.
So if you want one fast, Jay will be working his butt off and putting that available for pre-order.
It is a very limited number coming on this order because they're from the first batch. If you pre-order, there is a lucky little gift to be added on, and I would put a pre-order in if you're considering because it's worth the extra upgrade that you're going to get.
Gifts are normally good with MST.
And it is only for the ones that will be shipped next week.
And from us, you get Haribo.
Okay, next question. Where are we at? Okay.
What time
are we? 10 to. We need to
well,
crack
we're
on.
good. We're good.
Well, no, we're around about a third of the way through the question so far.
Oh, balls.
Arno has asked,
Hey, Olga.
my FXX has a tendency to stall and over-rotate on full lock, mostly on concrete. Any ideas on that? Generally, make sure you're running wheel weights. It's normally caused, if I understand what you're talking about properly, it's normally caused by the inner wheel slowing too much and effectively braking.
It was hooking in, isn't it, on the front?
But essentially, what happens is you unlock, this wheel just slows down, eventually slows enough that it's causing drag. The chassis then just pivots around and rotates. If you add to the heavy wheel weights, in particular from MST, they keep momentum in the wheel, keeps it rolling for a bit longer, and almost cures that problem.
What I will say is that's also inherent of a chassis where it's become too rear focused, and you are putting everything into trying to get the rear end grip to get the drive.
I actually think that's inherent in a chassis that you just haven't dialed the balance in properly yet.
Yeah.
Because
the FXX, it's easy to go crazy with the KPI and that sort of thing. Which
normally, what I find is a little extra caster will help as well, because you actually
caster rather than KPI.
Yes, always. You generally what you need to do is reduce the front grip a little bit, but start with maintaining momentum on the wheel.
Yeah.
If you're driving in a straight line and suddenly you bang the wheel onto full lock, there's a lot of resistance goes onto on the lead wheel all of a sudden.
And on the trailing wheel.
Your technique has to be good. But it's always the lead wheel that causes the problem.
Yeah.
Because the lead wheel also normally has more lock.
But also be careful at that point, because when you're at that amount of angle where you are getting hooking, you're probably using more steering than you should be.
Yeah.
And you're crabbing effectively. So make sure that your angles are kept realistic.
Okay, Anna has a follow-up question. He said, also, after running my rear-wheel drive a couple of times, I've got the feeling when it comes to track design, layouts for rear-wheel drive can be made to look a lot more like real-life tracks, with a longer run-up to the first corner, and therefore can differ a lot from a CS-oriented track.
I completely disagree.
I disagree as well. The track design doesn't need to be different. We run both, we run both four-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive at the same time on our track, and it's fine.
It's absolutely fine. There's a couple of points where obviously the four-wheel drive's got more pickup.
Yeah.
The four-wheel drives ultimately are faster, but now we're at the point where our rear-wheel drive guys on the long corners, certainly, our rear-wheel drives guys are faster because they can stay in the power longer. They can keep the forward momentum going longer. Track design, rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive is irrelevant. The line is different.
I was going to say, to me, the track design is actually the critical element. But if you're looking at it from a different point of view,
in the sense
the track design,
there's good or bad.
If it's different between rear-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, then the track has been designed badly.
Yeah.
To get a good track design, it has to work for both, because it just means it's a good track.
And this is all stuff that we didn't know a while back, but we have studied very hard
and
with
made lots of
circuit
tracks.
design professionals. And at this point, I think we've designed more than 300 circuits. We worked out roughly
something like that, probably more than that.
And that is a lot of circuits. You know, we practice a lot, and we still make cock-ups. It's
it still gets tweaked. We still put a track down and then tweak things after a couple of days when we've had more people run on it. Because the thing is, we can set a track up for ourselves, and then we have people come along that are relatively new to this, and they drive it slightly differently, and it doesn't work for them, so we have to make an adjustment.
I mean, shall I put out there our basic rule of thumb for each track?
We already have done, and we need to move on.
Okay.
We've got a lot more.
Well, basically, in any track, no more than 5 direction changes maximum, but that's with 2 of those being a flick.
Yeah.
So, like 3 direction changes and a flick. That's kind of how it works, or 3 direction changes. And if you look at the Japanese tracks, your Tabe Arena have just put a new thing out. There's got 3 changes. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Tom Hampton. He says,
hey, Tom.
I've never had any spur pinion meshing issues, but since buying a XXX, I'm going through a spur gear every month or so. Using boost and turbo, and when hitting the brake, it seems to be killing them. I don't run full brake either, so that's got me thinking I'm meshing them wrong. Could lots of turbo and boost be detrimental to lifespan of spur gear? Have you ever experienced it before? The only time I've ever damaged spur gears is from poor mesh. But I know Tom runs at Wickham quite a lot, and they've got a relatively grippy track, and so that puts a lot more load on the spur gear when you're using turbo and brakes and things like that. So it could be something to do with that. Chances are it's a meshing issue.
The XXX,
if I remember right, last time I saw Tom's chassis, I had to tweak his mesh
Well, the other thing with the Triple X is the way it's designed. If you're not using the metal washers, the screw heads will bite into aluminium. So where you think you're meshing it and it feels right, when you do it the second screw, it will tweak. And it can also...
That's inherent of most...
Well, if you damage the mount point, that'll happen.
Yeah.
But also what happens is that you can actually, in those, you can make the motor sit slightly skewed because of that.
And that will munch through.
And that will munch through.
The other thing you have to consider as well, Tom, is if you're going through spur gears, change your pinion, because you may have a bad pinion that's got a slight kink to it, or it might be slightly warped or something like that. And
it's worn out.
Basically, your mesh between the pinion and spur has to be 100% square. If it's slightly off, you'll just eat them, regardless of anything. Yeah. The trick I found with the Triple X is to stop using sight and just use feel.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to see properly.
When you're doing it, something with a...
Essentially, what you want to do is lock the pinion. You can't see this at all, but lock the pinion, and you should have a little tiny bit of movement.
And then, well, I don't know if I go close. I'm holding the pinion now, and that's... I don't know if you can see the movement in my finger, but it's only a tiny amount.
But there is definite movement.
Yeah.
It doesn't show up on the camera properly.
Well, it's about 0.5 millimeter anyway.
Yeah.
If that. That's not even that. But that's...
Yeah, I mean, the only time I've ever damaged spur gears on a Triple X was at the Euros in 2014 when I had a motor mount screw rattle out, and my the motor mount actually moved physically 4 or 5 millimeters, and it took a chunk out of the spur gear.
The only time I've done it is when I damaged a motor mount because I was being a dumbass and I wasn't using the metal washers, and also having a damaged pinion. Aside from that, if it's meshed, it should just continue running indefinitely.
Okay, next question. Taj has asked, ride height is one of the quickest ways to change the handling of the car when you're on the track. Can you explain the effects of lower or higher ride height, front and rear? If you think from a really basic point of view, think of it as a load element. If you have a chassis that's like this, this is relatively square currently, but when the battery sits in this, it does sit a little bit tailed down. That means essentially, if you think of it from a corner weighting point of view, there is more weight applied to the rear wheels, which in theory means more traction at the rear, or more emphasis on traction on the rear. If you were to have the nose down, then there is more traction on the front. If it's square, then it's even. If you want more front traction, you can drop the nose a little bit. If you want more rear traction, you drop the rear a little bit. This is all within reason, and assuming the suspension still has enough movement to move, and that
because it's one of those things where there's a but.
There's about 50 buts on this, unfortunately. But as a basic point of view, you just want to make sure that the chassis is balanced. So normally, I would recommend people start slightly tailed down, only because in 99% of cases that's where people end up anyway.
Yeah.
In theory, starting level front and rear is actually probably more sensible.
Well,
but almost everyone ends up going.
As a kind of basic, if I let's see, G, right. So if I draw a line, and that is the center of gravity of the chassis, you can also move above or below this line.
Christopher, we answered your question earlier in the video, so if you watch the rerun, you'll see. Sorry.
Okay. So if that's your center of gravity of the chassis, you can move your center of gravity up or down, and basically adjust the roll characteristics of the car as well. So the dynamic movement. If you move it below, you get less movement. You move it above, you get more movement. But that also depends on how much travel you're allowing in your dampers and what all the arms are doing.
Yeah. And
it gets massively complicated.
Yes.
But if you
I was trying to keep it super simple.
If you imagine, well, the simple thing is you've got a center of gravity, this longitudinally, center of gravity latitudinally, and you are basically adjusting where you are on that point. So what you end up with is center of gravity in crosshairs, and you are choosing where in that range you are. And obviously the ideal point is directly in the center or slightly below the center, but getting below is difficult. Anyway,
that's not what we needed to talk about.
Complicated stuff.
Bowker has asked a question I've kind of already mentioned anyway, but he said, in which situation would you put the wheel weights in? I have them, but haven't found the exact effect of them yet, and when to use them front, rear, both. I would say put them in both and work from that point. If you've got the heavier ones, which I think Balkan does, start with them in. With rear-wheel drive, I don't see a reason you wouldn't use them, in all honesty, unless you felt like you had too much grip, which you don't.
Well, my logic works this way. When you're starting out in rear-wheel drive, add the weight, no problem.
Wheel weight specifically, we're talking about.
Wheel weights, or any weight.
No, we're talking.
But specifically,
just
specifically wheel weights. But ultimately, the fastest you will be is with less weight. A lighter chassis will be faster. Look at F1.
I disagree on rear-wheel drive. Wheel weights in the front will always make you faster because you can carry more speed. Always.
But in theory, what I'm saying is that's an aid.
It's not.
It isn't the ultimate.
It's a tuning feature. It's not an aid. It's not a cheaty kind of thing. It's just.
Let's agree to disagree.
Okay. Next area for questions. So we have questions all over the place today. Next question is. This would be when everything goes slow.
We've got all the questions on.
In the group, we've got them on the page and we've got them on YouTube.
Okay. What are we doing now?
I'm waiting for the page to load.
Oh, man. Typically, it's...
Shit itself. Let's see if it works on my phone.
That is not good. They worked.
There we go.
Apparently, it needed some encouragement from another device.
Let's get going. You need to talk about something while this goes.
I'm just watching this. It's quite exciting.
Right. Okay. Stephen has asked. I'm doing this from memory because it's still not loaded. He asked about the rear uprights for an MS01D, saying that the instructions mention that you need to use the balls rather than the standard plastic inserts to mount on the top and bottom. You don't need to use them. They are
recommended.
They are described as that because they're a VIP item, and VIPs have the balls as standard. Essentially, is how you need to think of it. So actually, you don't need. It
is better to use metal balls. They're a cleaner action.
It's not essential, but I would highly recommend it. If you're putting the aluminium, if you've invested in the aluminium knuckles, you should invest in the balls. They work a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And this still isn't loading, and it's starting to drive me crazy. I know.
Do you try your phone instead?
Let's just go this way. Let's try this out.
Okay.
There we go.
Jesus, there's a million questions.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think I've answered that question right, Stephen. If not, just fire me a message and I'll get to it. David Jennings has said,
"Right, Dave.
He's been considering going to the Acuvance ESC motor and Tau 2. He's been following Dave Coe's trouble installing, and this put him off the purchase. Said all good things when it comes to the ESC. Essentially, what are the things I need to have in place to make an easier installation?" Essentially, I'm going to put together a video, I think, next week. It's not going to be a very well presented video. It's going to be a very crude thing because I don't have a lot of time.
Well, maybe we can do soldering techniques for Acuvance as well.
That's something else. Useful. We just need to do an installation.
Well, that is installation.
No, I mean a setup. How to get it, how to actually get it out of the box and make it work.
Yeah,
that's what we need to do. He says he watches every week from Australia.
Awesome.
Good job, David.
That's amazing.
Come
visit us.
Yeah. Basically, the only problem that Dave really had was, or the biggest problem he had was getting the update onto the ESC.
Which is a bit of a fact.
If you buy the ESC now and you get current stock, if you buy it from a reputable dealer, you will get not the latest update, but you'll get an update already applied to the ESC that will allow it to work with the Tau 2 anyway.
Yeah.
Essentially, if it has.
So they're basically on Tau 2 version.
If it has this blue sticker on, that means it will work with Tau 2.
Yeah.
Essentially.
But it's Tau 2 version 1, not Tau 2 version 2.
You're confusing.
To clarify.
Things. No, it's Tau 2 version 1.1 is what it will be.
Okay.
But it doesn't make any difference. It will enable it to work because that's Tau 2. What I'm talking about is the ESC has to be updated to work with Tau 2. If you get the one with the sticker, it will just work with
the Tau 2. Sorry, I didn't see your point there.
So essentially, that's the only problem. If you need to update, that's where the trouble comes in. Essentially, what it all boils down to, which I've mentioned before, is that Acuvance are not a software developer. They've made software to enable you to update your ESC and devices. They don't have digitally signed drivers, which by default Windows 7 and Windows 8 block because they think because it's not digitally signed, it could be unsafe. So you have to basically restart your PC, disable digital driver signature requirements, which on Windows 8 is really easy. It takes 5 minutes, and then you need to install. The problem is other elements can come into play with that, because antivirus and security settings and things on each individual PC can prevent it from enabling the USB device to work when it's plugged in. So it can be complicated. It can also be really simple.
I'm so confused by that.
Most people will be. It doesn't matter in the slightest. Essentially, if you've got a problem, try another computer. That's how it works. I'm going to put together a blog post and a video, and if what I say doesn't work, just try a different computer. That's the easiest option. It also works differently on Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows XP, Windows Vista. They all have a slightly different requirement. So it's the reason I've not done a blog post, is because basically I need to go and do a bit of research to describe how to do these things on all the different versions of Windows. And to go back to Art's question, it only works on Windows, not on Mac.
There you go.
Anyway, next question. Do you know if I can find setup sheets for MST cars somewhere on the internet? This is quite a long question that I'm going to have to skip through because we're running out of time. But essentially, there are some setup sheets out there. The problem I have with just taking somebody else's setup sheet is it's always a preference. I don't like the way your car drives. You don't like the way my car drives.
I think the only setup sheet that's relevant is the standard setup sheet, and you work from that.
Yes.
And
so in particular,
if you cock it all up, chassis, go back there, you know,
like the FXX and the RMX, the setup sheets that you get with them are exceptional. The settings are perfect, and in 90% of the cases, you won't improve on it. But in terms of, like, you know, me putting my carpet RMX setup sheet out is kind of irrelevant, because I change what I do all the time.
Yeah,
and styles change, and if you find one that somebody wrote a year ago, things have moved on since then anyway.
Oh god, yeah.
So it's kind of pointless. I wouldn't recommend trying to find somebody else.
But that's why you don't see that many setup sheets out there from Japan, really.
Yeah, the style is always changing. We do have the blank ones on our website, which somebody's pointed out. But the setup sheet to me is something I would only use if I often went between 3 or 4 different tracks, and each required a different setup, and it would just be for my own memory. Just where was I last time I left that track, kind of thing.
It's quite thirsty.
Okay. Bradley has asked, on the FXX VIP, can you explain how mounting the gyro in different positions affects the car, e.g. at the front or rear of the car?
For me, it just the feeling. It's like how the gyro responds.
It's kind of like a timing thing for me.
Yeah.
You can vary, and it's a very, very, very small fractional difference. It changes the...
So further forward tends to be a bit more reactive, and further back tends to be a bit more sedate.
You kind of have to think of it about the arcs that is, or the plane that it's traveling on, and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, you're moving it away. If the axis is between the front wheels, moving it closer or further away from the axis.
It puts it on a wider arc, which means it's a slower reaction. There's also, you can also try having off center and things like that. Doesn't make as much difference at all.
I find centered works better
for me,
especially if you've got a lot of dynamic roll.
Yes, for sure. My advice would be to try it in maybe 2 or 3 different positions and see which one you prefer. It also, to be perfectly honest, depends on whether you care how your wiring looks and things like that.
Yeah.
If you really want your wiring to be super neat, put the gyro where you need it to be.
I'm very interested in what the guys at not Razilab, the D-like circuit. I forgot the name of the circuit, but they're actually running the gyros offset where the driver's head would be.
Yeah.
And those guys are making some really cool.
I think that's just a little trend for now. They'll move that again because they do
possibly, but I definitely think it's worth going. Just see what happens.
Sasha has asked, is there a breakdown of what each Acuvance setting does and how it impacts the motor performance and the balance of the chassis? No, I want to do that. But as you can imagine, it's quite an in-depth thing to set aside some time to do.
Massively in-depth.
It also, again, is one of these things we've talked about earlier where each element can affect other things in a massive different
the problem is
ways. And the problem is, if we were to give you a breakdown on how boost works, that has to be linked to turbo.
Yeah.
And if we don't link it to turbo, you can damage things.
To drive frequency, which has, it's all interconnected.
It's basically, it looks like we need to do some mega posts then spend a lot of time on this, which we will try and do. Unfortunately, we don't have all that much time available to us, so it may take us some time, but we will get to it at some point. Okay, I'm not going to go to the rest of his sub-questions because we don't have time, unfortunately, because we've already run over.
Are they complicated?
It's specific questions about settings,
okay.
but they're not something we can answer right now.
Okay.
We have some more. Okay, I think where was the other one? Oh yeah. Now we go to YouTube.
Right, so we're doing both Facebook pages.
Yep.
We're doing YouTube now.
Yep.
Have we done Twitter and Instagram?
No.
Okay. This is a lot of
there's too many places for me to look. If it's not on YouTube, Facebook, it's not getting answered, essentially. Oh shit, we did have one come in via email.
And email. Oh crap.
I can't remember which email address they went to, so I'll just double check. We may just leave that until next week because we're already over time and we have quite a lot to get done today. Let me just have a quick scout. I think we're just going to have to say we're done, mate. To be honest.
Are we there? What time are we on?
It's 12:10.
That's not that bad.
It's not, but we have a lot to do.
We've run out over way worse than that before.
We have, but if people want to be able to pre-order an RRX, then I've got to go and move and do stuff.
Yep, and if people want to use the circuit, I've got to vacuum it.
Yes.
The glamour of our world.
And we also have to do paints and all that sort of stuff, so we have to crack on. So
who's cleaning the bog?
Not me, if anyone wants to buy anything today.
Gosh and darn it.
Anyway, we've got to wrap today up, unfortunately. But thanks for all the questions. We had some very good in-depth questions for us.
Questions are good. We like questions because they're, for obvious reasons. Anyway, we're done. Like and favorite this shit.
Yes. We'll be back next week, possibly with some cool new stuff if we can get the shipment here in time. But I think the MST stuff may be delayed until after next week because we have to wait.
So much.
We have to wait until one of the early days next week for the chassis to become available, and then it has to be shipped. So yeah, but we will have everything as soon as we can. We also have on that order we have the adjustable offset wheels coming in. We have the slide rack for FXX. We have the new MST servos. We have basically anything new.
We have a new Acuvance bundle deal on the website.
We do, which we've completely forgot to mention. You can currently get for the next for a very short period of time, you can get 15% off when you buy a Tao 2 with a Tachyon Airia and any motor. And you can also, at the time of purchase, get 15% off capacitors.
We realise that they're expensive items and it's a lot of money spent at once.
Yes.
But 15% also, because of that value, relates to a mega discount. So
yes, it's very good. It's not a discount that will be around forever, so don't count on it being around forever. It will stick around for a while. We haven't decided yet. Yep. It'll be at least another week, possibly 2 weeks.
And we'll obviously, we're going to put more information out to support the Acuvance users.
Yes,
as best we can as well.
Yeah. If you've got any specific ideas on what you want to see us cover, very specifically, my plan is to do a how to update your ESC and a basic rundown of the settings. It won't be the most comprehensive thing in the world. They're the two things I plan on doing. We may do a soldering video as well. But that's got a that'll be
we soldering.
I'll be the cameraman.
Me soldering.
That will have a bunch of clauses and get out clauses, and if you do this, you may kill your servo.
Basically, unless you're super badass at soldering, don't solder an Acuvance.
That is,
well, you can
and even if I put it this way, even if you think you're a badass, still probably don't do it.
Yeah,
because we've had quite a few people that think they're badass. And
rule of thumb is if you're not getting that solder done in less than 4 seconds, you're not doing it right.
4 seconds is quite a long time as well. Less ideally, significantly less ideally. 2
or 3 seconds generally.
But yeah, anyway, we'll wrap this up. We've got to go and crack on and get stuff done.
Hamakavula.
We shall see you next Friday.
I'm done. My work's done here. Drop the mic. That's it. I'm out, son.
Don't touch the mic, man. It's expensive.
Sorry.
Anyway, bye guys.
Beep, beep.